I will call the meeting to order. First, order of business is pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Number 3 is FOIA. Notice of public notification of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. Next order of business is approval of the minutes from January 18th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of January 18th.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Catherine? Did we lose her?
She's so, this is Catherine, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, now we have citizen comments. Is this for all action items?
I think so. I think just in general.
And comments are limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anybody who's going to speak?
I like to.
Do you keep track of the?
I haven't got.
Okay, thank you. My name is York Glover. I'm the District 3 representative for St. Helena. And I basically want to come and talk about, and thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Epps, to speak to you. Some concerns was raised at the community, the CPO committee meeting that was held on Tuesday concerning the survey that was being on the website. And appreciate the survey. Want to, as a matter of fact, I did enter a site on the survey and probably would have some more. But the concern was that the communication and getting the announcement out to the people, and most of it right now I think may have been just on the website, and a lot of folks don't have access to internet, particularly on St. Helena as well, because we are facing broadband issues, and we're going to try to address that from a county perspective. But the deadline, and maybe extended the deadline, and wanting to know whether as a committee you've reached out to much of the older people in the community, the Penn Center as group, as sites and stuff, and seeing whether you can garner information from them, because you're looking for, sites, places of gathering, etc. Unlike most people and educated folks, documentation is done, in writing. A lot of the documentation on history in the Black community is oral, and so you got to talk to people and get that information from them. So just basically want to say, try to extend an invitation, particularly to a place like the Penn Center, so that they can have a gathering of people from the St. Helena community, older people, and maybe have a session for receiving that information from them. The one I did and stuff was actually a site on the Oaks Plantation community, and it's an old site, I believe. So it goes way beyond 1950, but I put it on there anyway because there is when I was a little child, I ran into a tabby ruin, And at the time, I didn't know what a tabby ruin was. And as I got older, I understood, what a tabby ruin is. So maybe looking at that as well and doing some excavation to see what that ruin was about. And then maybe I'll know exactly what was there. Thank you. I appreciate it. Was it 3 minutes?
Yes.
I thought somebody was coming.
Thank you.
You did it right.
Hey, this is Catherine Pringle. Can y'all hear me?
Can you see us?
She can't see
I
us.
see y'all. You're about the size of a postage stamp.
No.
So I didn't know if Mr. Glover knew that the Oaks Plantation is held under an easement, a preservation easement by the Historic Beaufort Foundation.
Okay.
So they've got all kind of information about the building and the grounds.
Okay.
And we'll be listening
Was
later.
it a church? Was the ruin a church?
I don't know. I
Okay.
don't know. I just wanted you to know that the house itself, the plantation house itself on the water, that and the grounds to that are under an easement. I've been out there for an inspection on the easement thing, but I have not seen any tabby ruins. So that's interesting.
Yes, I know exactly what house you're talking about. This would be east of that in another little area of the Oaks Plantation.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
And maybe everyone should say their name. Just make sure everybody says their name, so she's taking minutes.
Hi, my name is Elaine Scott. I have lived and worked and done history work on St. Helena for over 30 years. I did used to work with the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And at one point, I realized they're only interested in the homes that would be like Tomby or Coffin Point. What we have on St. Helena is so precious and so unusual, and it is never acknowledged because of the fact that it wasn't built by wealthy people. For instance, we have Mabe's store. Does anyone recognize this building?
Yeah.
What do you think it is?
That's the one right there on the, it's right across from the art studio.
It's the Gullah Grub.
Oh, Gully Grub, okay,
Right now, you're right.
right.
And it is now falling apart, along with the packing shed that is also on the register, and it is falling apart. Why I gave you all a copy of my little book is because there are so many things in here that nobody knows anything about. Dr. York Bailey's house, for instance. There are so many valuable places on St. Helena, but because they have always belonged to the Gullah, and Gullah people couldn't get the money to restore them, and they went and tore them down and got the manufactured houses. I am proposing that somebody on your committee, and I don't really know what your committee is, but somebody needs to help us save the places that you may not think are valuable, but they are extremely valuable to our cultural footprint and to our cultural identity. And you do know that if we don't save them, we'll end up looking like Hardyville. And that nobody on St. Helena wants that. We want to preserve our community exactly the way we put it in the cultural protection overlay, which means we also want to save our humble buildings and all of the other parts of our community. So I'm just putting that forward for you all to look at this book, see a few places you may never have heard of, but that we know are very important. Okay, thank you for your time.
Has anyone cataloged the houses that were in?
Well, of course not. I mean, are you kidding? The National Trust wasn't interested in any of that. And they asked me about some Gullah houses, and I said, well, you're just a little late because this has all been torn down. People have ignored our community and our island for a long time, but that's over now. So,
Have we gone to praise houses and?
yes, you probably have, and those are important and those are saved, but there are many other places that we can identify, as York said, if we could meet in our homes, I mean, on St. Helena Island at Penn Center, we could save those places. I wrote that little book about St. Helena. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Would anyone else speak? For public comments? Okay.
Excuse me, I do have to leave. I gotta be with Hilton at 2:30. So,
Well,
but I wanted
thank
to
you
make
so
that
much.
presentation.
Okay,
Thank
go.
you, Hilton. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
All right, first action item is consideration of Castle Hill plantation alterations.
Let me see real quick. On Teams, are y'all able to hear us? Oh, I cannot hear.
Yes, I can. Catherine can.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, continue, sorry.
So is there anything that you would like to say?
Sure, yeah. I'm Michael Frederick with Frederick and Frederick Architects. We presented this project in January, and you asked us to do two things. One was to get rid of a circular building that we had, and we did that. And then you asked me to also make the outdoor living space smaller, and we did that as well.
Open it up to the board for any comments.
Can you keep scrolling?
This is Catherine. I've got some comments on the new proposal, and mostly it's the second floor addition for the master bathroom. I feel like it's top heavy. It looks like it's a big thing sitting on spindly legs. I just wondered if it would be possible to, instead of having it wrapped in brick, make it be siding instead, and if there was a way to make those in that bay where the shower windows are. I mean, I realize it's a shower, there's a privacy element there, but if it'd be possible to make the windows longer. But I mean, it's obviously an addition. The house has had so many changes to it, some of them good, some of them not so good. It certainly needs so much. I feel like, I personally feel like we should just, if you could lighten it up, if that would work. I know you've got that whole entablature that wraps around that is part of the brick, but if you could simplify that section that's on that pop out on the second floor with less of a detailed dental work sort of cornice, and make it siding, and maybe that would lighten up what it looks like a heavy load. But I personally am ready to go ahead with approving this, because there's been so much done to this house that I think this is not detrimental. That's all.
I just wanted to ask, was it the owner who asked for the columns to be placed on the house?
Yes.
Because the 1930s house did not have any columns.
Right.
So, I mean, it seems like we're changing the intent of the house if we're looking at the 30s.
Yeah, we talked about this in January, and we looked back at the examples of the architect's work and the projects that he had done around the area that were similar. And this one was built right in the Depression, and we had come to the conclusion that, and we don't have the original drawings, that it might not have been built as it was envisioned to start with. And if you look at the report, have you seen the report that I turned in that had the examples of the
Yes.
architect's other work?
Yes, I don't think I have an update from January, unless what we were sent is the update. So I'm looking at the whole report with all the drawings and the houses.
Yes.
You should have this report.
Okay. Yes, probably is.
And I think you can scroll back and get to it, right?
You're talking about these other examples of his architecture. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, yeah. Irving, yeah, and he,
Mhm.
and this one is just such an anomaly with all of his, we're looking at all of his other work. And the fact that it was built right in the middle of the Depression.
Well, evidently it was built as a hunting lodge. So, which doesn't mean it would need columns or not need columns, but it was not built as a, plantation house in the 30s. So maybe that had something to do with it. So, and the other question I just wanted to throw in, is there a lot of care being taken to preserve the Confederate force, the Confederate earthworks and all back there?
There is.
Okay. Because evidently there was a battle right behind the house.
Back in the January meeting, I'm trying to remember, was there concern about the size of those columns on the portico? I think I remember that being brought up.
Someone mentioned the size of those columns, and we answered by saying that they were precisely what Palladio would have done as far as the diameter of the columns and the size of the frieze.
Mhm.
There's rules that the classical, and we went by those rules.
Because they still look sort of massive.
Mhm.
I don't have a problem with those columns at all. I'm kind of in agreement with Catherine, though, with the bathroom that you put on there and those pilings underneath, or the columns underneath, they just look weak.
Well,
And that bathroom was the former,
It was the
Yeah,
former
it was-
Tempietto,
Yeah.
the circular building.
yeah. So we nixed that, but yeah. I mean, and maybe if you could lighten it up by using clapboard or something that's a lighter, visually lighter. But yeah,
I can do that.
I'm okay with it.
And I can get rid of the frieze too and make it look so it looks more like,
We're still going to do the presentation.
an addition, later addition.
Yeah, because it still sticks out. Although the improvements in the garden and reducing that outdoor space does help. I think your problem might be that it's in white so that we can distinguish.
That's,
Yeah.
the model it wants to show what's existing and what's new, and I rendered it that way. So,
Right.
and I think you're right about that it jumps out.
Right.
And it really is just a tool to show you.
I think if it was grayed out,
It would blend in
blend
better.
in a lot better, but it does stick out, but that's because of the coloring. Yeah, see that there?
There, it's.
Yeah, that's not
it's-
as obtrusive.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. What do y'all say?
Somebody wanna make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve as is.
Wait a minute, Kathy, what about the lightening up with, using siding and simplifying the cornice?
Okay, I make a motion that we approve it as is to also include simplification of the porticos and lightening up of the materials for the bathroom. Is that all right, Catherine?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have another question.
Oh, wait, we've got one more question.
I don't know what the rulings are as far as an historic status and how that works if we have such a drastic change to what the original house looked like. Does that change in any way, or?
Well, the thing is, the original house burnt down.
No, I mean the 30s, the Williams's house from the 30s.
Catherine,
The
can
one
you
that's there
answer that?
now.
I don't know that answer for sure, but I just feel like there have been so many different things added on, taken away, whatever, that if it was going to lose its National Register status, whatever, that might have, that would have already occurred. But I don't know who does that. Who would do that? There's somebody going to come in from the National Trust or from the State Historic Preservation Office and do a survey. I don't know how that happens.
And And the historic status would have been given to the house that stands now, not to the one that burnt down, or, right?
Right.
Aye.
Okay,
I mean, there were 2 fires. The
right.
first house that was there that
Yeah.
burned down. And then this
You don't
house.
even know what that looked like, right?
No.
Right,
Okay.
nobody has a record.
All
And
right.
then this house, I mean, the entire interior was gutted. That's kind of how this all got started.
Yeah, I don't think there's much
It's been
integrity.
through so many changes, it really doesn't have an architectural style, so to speak.
All right,
Okay, so the motion that stands is, on the table is to approve it as is with modifications to the porticus and the lighting of the exterior.
It's to the
Second story bathroom addition.
modifications to the cornice, simplification of the cornice.
Yes.
All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All approved. So the next order of business, thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thanks, you too.
You too.
Is the above ground survey update presentation by Stantec?
Yes, good afternoon. Let me make sure I can share my screen here. And is this meeting already recording, or Kristen, did you want to specially record this section to make it available later?
It's being recorded.
Already? Okay, great. All right. I will start by introducing myself. My name is Emily Reed. I'm an architectural historian with Stantec. I'm the project manager for this project. And I've got Althea Wunderler-Selby on the line with me. She was recently in town to conduct some of the early research for the context. So if we have any nitty-gritty questions, I hope she can help me answer them. All right. So today we are going to give you an overview of the project, its purpose, break down the different tasks that are part of the project, and then review the schedule. So the image here shows the survey area, which corresponds to St. Helena Island and the unincorporated areas of Beaufort County, specifically south of the Broad River. So that's shown in gold. As you know, the county has contracted our firm to conduct a historic resources survey of this area, and historic resources surveys are a tool that municipalities can use to identify and record their historic properties. As part of a survey, these resources are also placed within a historic context to better understand their significance, and they can be assessed for eligibility for the National Register of Historic Places. Many of these things that I'm saying might be old hat to this committee, but hoping that we'll have some broader audience be able to view this PowerPoint and this presentation later. So bear with me as I go over some terms that might be already familiar with, you guys might already be familiar with. So this project will be focusing specifically on resources built between 1950 and 1979. And that's because resources built before 1950 were previously surveyed. There may be a need to revisit some of those in the future, but that is the scope of this project. We will also be redocumenting properties that were recommended as eligible for the National Register in 1998, but that have not been subsequently listed. A really important part of what we're doing is developing a historic context statement, which really helps guide the evaluation of whether or not something is historically significant. Basically, it's a written framework that serves as a tool for the surveyors, and our project is going to focus on post-World War II history with a special emphasis on Black history. And the project is funded jointly by the county and from grants administered by the South Carolina Division of Archives and History. I am not able to see the room or the chat right now, so if anybody wants to jump in with a question, please just speak up, or I can answer questions at the end. All right, so there are 3 primary reasons that the county has undertaken this project. The first one is to update and expand on the context that was written for that 1998 survey, which included history through the 1940s only, and then to provide the county with updated recommendations of eligibility for resources that were recommended eligible but have not been listed yet, and then recommendations for National Register eligibility for newly recorded resources, including districts. And then finally, to support the county or individual property owners in pursuing future National Register nominations for properties that we identify in the survey area. This project has 4 main tasks. The first one is community engagement and outreach to make sure that the public's aware of the project and has the opportunity to share their knowledge with us. And as we heard from Mr. Glover right before this, it'll be important to make sure we tailor that to the community and the ways that they are comfortable giving that information and making sure that that's accessible. So I know Kristen has plans for a workshop on St. Helena, and I think that'll be very useful. The second task is historic context development, as I mentioned, to provide a framework for evaluating these resources that we document. The third item is the survey itself, which includes pre-fieldwork preparations and the fieldwork, and then post-fieldwork and reporting, which includes managing and finalizing our data, summarizing the results, and coming up with recommendations in a report. So our first task, community engagement and outreach, is ongoing. This meeting is a piece of that campaign. We understand that there's a lot about the post-World War II era and Black history that's not in the history books yet, so this is a really important task for our project. Mr. Glover mentioned the importance of oral history to this community, so we want to gather as much information from the public as we can. In addition to this meeting today, we'll be presenting the results of the project at another meeting in November. The county will be posting updates on social media, including their Instagram, Facebook, X, and Nextdoor accounts, and they're going to send out periodic email blasts with more in-depth information. Stakeholders are also being identified and will be included in the email blasts. And right now, we are asking the public to participate in a little questionnaire at the link that's displayed on the screen. That is tinyurl.com/BC Historic Places. So this lets the community members share their knowledge of important historic resources, either by plugging in an address or pinning it on a map and telling us about it. We encourage everybody to make use of this and share it out widely. As of yesterday, I believe we'd only had maybe 10 or so responses, some blank responses. So we would love to get the engagement on that survey up higher if we can.
I have a question.
Yes.
I get the local paper and I don't recall seeing anything about it in the Beaufort Gazette. Is that one of the things you're using as print media or just online?
That was not part of the current campaign, but that's a great idea to add that. So we can look into that. The Beaufort Gazette.
I have a question too. So the only 2 public meetings are this one and one at the end?
Yes.
That's not gonna work.
Well, hold on.
Aren't you doing something?
Yeah, I'm gonna be doing something for St. Helena to further this. This is just the only one that Stan Tech themselves are doing.
Okay, all right, thanks for the clarification. That's
Yeah, thanks.
trying to get to. Okay, and there'll be just for St. Helena, nothing south of the Broad?
We haven't done anything, I mean, that could be an option. I'll maybe talk to council for that one, but, I mean, I'm gonna talk to York about, or Mr. Glover, about doing, one for St. Helena soon. But we need to schedule exactly when and where.
Thank you.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Yeah.
Just a recommendation for community engagement purposes. The post office on St. Helena is actually a very great touch point. So if you wanted to distribute those questionnaires in a format that is fill-outable and then taggable, they could be consolidated at some point at your leisure. But that's a good place to touch people out there.
That's a great tip. Thank you.
Are people allowed to just put stuff in the post office? Is that?
I think so.
I don't think so.
You'd have
No,
to
there's
get
a bulletin.
permission.
There's
If you
bulletin,
get permission? Oh, okay,
yeah, on the bulletin board there. So
okay.
even if it's an announcement that this is happening, I'll the Beaufort Gazette question.
I know there's some rules about what you can
Papers
put
take
there.
place there. There's free papers and everything.
Yeah.
All right, we ready to move on to the context?
Sure.
So our second task is developing a historic context, which is also ongoing. It's going to add that post-World War II history that was not included in the 1998 survey. And we're also hoping to include the stories of the survey area's Black communities. The themes will be like Black heritage, post-war tourism and architecture, and the civil rights movement. It's being developed with information from secondary and primary sources gathered digitally and during the research trip that Althea recently made. The context is not meant to be an exhaustive history of an area. They're, again, just a roadmap for identifying properties with historic significance. During her research trip, Althea visited the Beaufort District Collection, the Historic Bluffton Foundation, Morris Center for Low Country Heritage, and the York Bailey Museum at Penn Center. We will be completing the historic context and submitting that to the county and the state before we do field work for their review to make sure that we can accurately assess resources within their historic context. Oops. So the fieldwork for the survey has 3 phases: pre-field work, windshield survey, and an intensive level survey. Before the windshield and intensive surveys, which are planned for this summer, we're going to be developing a digital map in GIS to use during fieldwork. It's going to have a database with the survey area boundary, the property boundaries to the extent that those are available from parcel data, and those will be color-coded by their construction date. We're going to have high-resolution, modern, and historic aerials and historic maps. We're also going to populate that map with the historic resources identified by the community through this survey so that we make sure we investigate those appropriately during the fieldwork. We will be using our tablet computers in the field, and we'll have those digital field maps loaded up in there for the fieldwork. So we are going to start with a windshield survey, which consists of basically driving the entire survey area, looking at all the properties built between 1950 and 1979, paying close attention to those identified by the public and things that have popped up in our research. So we will be kind of canvassing the whole area for those properties that we think have the highest potential for National Register eligibility based on architecture or historical associations. To be eligible for the National Register, a property must also have what we call integrity, that from the exterior, it should more or less look like what it did during the historic period. So that's kind of what we're going to be keeping our eyes peeled for in that initial phase of the survey. So we'll make a list of the properties that we investigate and the ones that we think have the highest potential for designation. At the end of the windshield survey phase, we'll have a map and a list of places. We're going to coordinate with the county to finalize that and determine which to document at the intensive level. And then we'll go back out to visit those properties, plus the ones previously identified in 1998 as eligible. And we will do photography, take notes on the architectural features, record the precise location with GPS, gathering all of this information on our tablet so it's backed up to the cloud. And both the windshield and the intensive survey will be done by qualified architectural historians. They will stay in the public right-of-way unless they have permission to enter the property by the owner. So after field work,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have a quick question. So
Yes.
if a property is identified and the owner doesn't want it in this list, is that possible? Because I know a lot of people get worried. Oh my God, if it's listed, that means I can't do anything to my property.
Right. So I think we would work with them to make sure that they understand the implications of documentation and designation, as those are different, right? So I think that if possible, we would still want to record it and document it in the survey, and then it would be up to the property owner if they wanted to actually pursue listing. No listing would be occurring without their permission.
Okay, thanks.
So after fieldwork, back in the office, we'll be finalizing the data that we collected, conducting additional research, going through a quality control process, being reviewed by other historians, discussing things among each other and with the county as necessary, and then compiling that information into a report and other project deliverables, the survey forms, and the list of properties. So that will include the historic context, an inventory of all the surveyed resources, and detailed descriptions of our National Register nominations, and recommendations for future work. We are also going to be preparing GIS deliverables, an access database, and that the state uses, and digital photographs. So we're hoping that this will be able to be quickly and easily integrated into the systems that the county and the state have already. And here is a look at the schedule. Currently, we're performing our research and starting the public outreach. The draft historic context will be done by June, and then will be reviewed by the county and the state. The field work is anticipated to occur in July or August. We'll then have until November to finalize the data and submit the draft deliverables. And then at that point, we'll hold the second public meeting to discuss the outcome of the survey with the public. Then the county and the state will have a review of the draft, and we'll make requested edits and submit the final deliverables in January 2025. And then post-project, with this information about eligibility that has come out of our survey, the county and individual property owners can pursue actual listing of the properties if they want to. That's not part of what we're doing, and it would be something that would only occur if the property owners wish to do that. The information we hope will be useful for a wider audience. If the county and residents are interested, the information could be used for lots of other purposes, like a local designation program outside of Beaufort, city of Beaufort. The county could use the survey results to guide planning and development initiatives. The content can be used for community history initiatives like Black History Month, programming, tour days, tourism, that sort of thing. So I thank you for your time today. We're excited to be part of this project. We're hoping that we can get some more traction on our questionnaire, and I've taken note of Mr. Glover's concern with the closing date. We'll see if we can extend that and if we can find a way to make it more accessible to those without internet. if you've got any questions at this point, I'm happy to answer them, or Kristen may be able to answer from the county's perspective.
No questions?
It's Catherine. I have a question. I didn't see on one of the first things you showed us, I didn't see Historic Beaufort Foundation listed as a resource. Are they a part of this? Because, for instance, they hold that easement that I mentioned earlier on the Oaks Plantation on St. Helena.
Mm-hmm.
I can speak to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we did reach out to them to ask if they had any resources they would recommend, and they did respond, very helpful for that. But with the length of our visit, it wasn't a very proactive use of time to go to their organization, but we are in contact with them and they are aware of the project.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Is Heritage Library on Hilton Head aware of the project?
Yep. We also reached out to them as well. They communicated that they didn't really have anything relevant to that post-war period. But again, they're aware of the project and know specifically what we're researching. So if they do have interest or have resources I can recommend, they have our contact information.
What about Queen Quet? She seems to be the pulse of the Gullah community.
Certainly, she is on those email blasts and is aware of the project too, and we definitely want to tap her as a great resource for this project.
All right.
Person here.
I can tell you Queen Quet is out of town for this meeting. She was very disappointed that no one has come out to St. Helena and spoken to the community. Disappointed might be an understatement. She wants you all to come out there, and she wants our people to give you their information personally. Not a lot of social media going on St. Helena. The Gullah people are, of course, involved. They have all that, but they don't. That's not their form of communicating. Their form of communicating is meeting and talking and telling, as York mentioned. So I, as a committee member of the Cultural Protection Overlay, I can tell you, you need to get out to St. Helena, and you probably need to do it rather quickly. The Queen is waiting. And we would like to give you our input because, I mean, I can tell already that this is not oriented toward our culture and our history. Have you any knowledge of Tomby? Tomby at Land's End Road.
It's a plantation.
Yes.
We don't like to use that word. We call it an estate. It was a plantation.
Yes.
Tomby, the owners now would never allow you to call it a plantation. It is an estate now. But historically, the house was built in 1798 or something like that. Do you know the owners?
We do not know the owners, but we would definitely love to have their contact information.
I'm kind of one of the caretakers there, so I can help you with that.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
One of the problems is that I didn't put Tomby in my little book, for example, because I worked there for over a decade, and I can tell you that they don't want people driving down Tomby Road and looking down their driveway. So they've really tried to keep a low profile, but I think it might be something important for you to check on, since Tomby and Coffin Point are the two major estates left on St. Helena. Oh, there are others. There's Frogmore Manor, and I think the Sanders have another one, but I would say Tomby and Coffin Point were the two anchors of society on St. Helena Island.
What year were those built?
Coffin Point, 1803. I mean, it's probably already on there.
Yeah, which is what, I mean, we need to make sure we're staying within this scope of 1950.
Well, I just want to make sure we stay within the scope of the Gullah culture. So Tomby is something that needs to be, you need to be aware of it.
Well, and York was talking about involving lesser buildings.
Yes, I mean, we're not wealthy people. We don't have a lot of these big estates or anything, but what we have is precious and worth preserving. So that's how the Gullah people feel. That's how I feel. But you know, having worked on this for 30 years, I kind of have a point of view that is valid.
Right, so one of the concerns from several people is, and we understand the scope of this does not have to do with before, it's not pre-World War II. So is there a plan in the future to revisit this, to include some that were missed the first time by Brockington?
I mean, that could definitely.
I would hope so. That's a great idea.
I mean, I'm just asking, I don't know.
Yeah, we would have to, that would have to be like a whole nother fiscal
That's-
year
I know.
funding thing.
It's-
This is just, right now, this is because the grant that we pursued was specifically during the civil rights era. So we aren't necessarily revisiting. We've talked about it, and we are open to do that in the future. For right now, this is just kind of a smaller project to get up to date with everything.
Right, because it's obviously after,
Yes.
yeah.
If you go back to the presentation, it did state that the survey that was done in 1998, those that weren't in the National Registry would be, you would look at those again. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, so the
Am I
ones that are-
Stating that?
Were looked at as having some eligibility or further, to be further looked at. Those are going to also be part of that.
They're just not, if they're not listed, which probably.
So
most
they
of
might
them are
not be listed, right, from the survey,
Yeah.
previous survey.
But if they were already missed, if they were missed the first time.
Yeah.
Like those places hidden in the woods, like the Tabby Ruins, they won't be looked
They
at
won't be
because
looked
that's
at
the
because
scope of
it's-
this is not for that.
For that.
I guess a key word for me would be linkage. You have one period that's been studied, you're doing another. What you want to make sure is that there's a link between those two. You don't want to start this off without showing some of what happened. So the key to me would be including that linkage, even if you had to say, this was done before and you can refer back this, but here's something that puts these two together. Because eventually you want to tell your whole story.
Continue.
I think-
You don't want to.
Yeah.
And y'all will be able to link a lot of these not new structures, but post the land and the buildings with previous use, right? I mean, there will be linkage.
That would be very important when you come to St. Helena to let people know what you've already identified, because they will be flying blind since it hasn't been published, so great to outline those.
I've been on this board a long time. And I know one of the things that we made a site visit was when Tomby was being renovated the second time.
Yeah,
Not when Jen
Snellgroves.
Turner did it, but
No.
the next one.
I believe that was when Deborah Ann and Sydney Snellgrove owned it.
Was when?
Deborah Ann and Sydney Snellgrove
Okay,
owned it. They did a lot of work with Cynthia Cole Jenkins.
so at
Always to
least
come.
we were involved with Tomby back then to make sure those changes were up.
That was all done according to the rules, yeah. She was adamant about that, Miss Deborah Ann.
Well, Sandy Yearly restored Tomby.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Are you Miss Yearly?
No, I'm
Oh.
not.
Oh, sorry.
No, I knew him.
I know.
But I think some of the houses that are in the Tomby area are worthy of
Yes, ma'am.
looking at. The little frame houses. And,
Yes, ma'am, you are exactly right.
And they probably were a little before 1950. I know they were there in 67 because that's when I arrived in the area.
Well, thank y'all. We appreciate the presentation and we'll be seeing a lot of y'all in the coming months.
Good luck to those
Absolutely.
people doing the field survey in July and August.
I
saw you laugh about that.
That's true.
Need some mosquito nets for sure.
Or they're just used to it, like. All right, I guess.
May I ask a question? What is the April 4th deadline for questionnaire? It closes then. What does that mean?
So they have some.
Survey.
Yeah, there's a survey at that tiny.url.
I've got that address.
Okay. And you can get online and take the questionnaire. And as it stands now, the deadline is April 4th. But
Okay.
they're possibly going to be able to extend it.
What about those people that don't use computers?
That's, they were, they're going to look in the possibility, put it in the post office,
Beaufort Gazette.
Beaufort Gazette,
Mhm.
and the county is possibly going to have a meeting, very likely going to have a meeting in St. Helena.
Yeah, personal meeting.
Yeah.
Before the 4th of April,
Yeah, hopefully it's in the next 2 weeks, but it may be
next week.
or within the next 2. I think we have to still figure out.
The free paper that people get, that they don't have to pay for it if you want to expand your.
Yeah, I was trying to think of that other.
The Island
newspaper.
News.
Islander.
Folks know they get that free and that's distributed.
I think he means the Island News.
Oh, yeah.
Did you get that? The Islander?
I got the Island News. What was that suggestion for prepaying for something?
If it's in free publications, it would be best.
Just think about
Oh.
Like Island
friends,
News,
family and all that.
Low Country Weekly.
Beaufort Gazette
It's extra.
It's not
Yeah,
free.
is not free, but
Yeah, I printed it out.
Worth it.
But the Island News is really.
Yeah, but then what they really need to do is have a personal meeting
Yeah.
with the community.
Yeah.
Because most of them aren't going to be reading that and they're not gonna be looking at that, but they will attend the personal public meeting. And
But
I
you
really
have to
wanna
advertise
stress
that.
that.
Absolutely right, the meeting itself.
and I will say that
That's why you
South
have
of
your
Broad
churches
needs
to
one,
help.
There you go.
exactly.
Churches for
Use
that.
the church.
South of Broad needs one as well. For the same reasons. You're gonna get better turnout, and I would say not during the day is my recommendation.
So,
Yeah, because we all work.
So to date, can Stantic tell us how the percentage of questionnaires they have to date that are completed?
Yeah, let me see if I can pull that up while we're talking. I don't have it open right now.
While you're doing that, how would we access your original or the one you did before?
1998.
One from the 90s?
Yes.
It's online. I can send that out.
Okay, could you do that?
Thank you.
And that was by a different consultant, but it is, I believe it is published somewhere online.
If you just go onto the county's website and there's like a search bar, you can just type in, I think, historic preservation or above ground survey, and then I'll go to it, and then you'll select like your area, and just scroll through those. It's
That's a little fast for me. Go to the county website and historic preservation.
yes, sir. If you search historic preservation, it may be like the second link that comes, or you can just search above ground survey,
Above ground survey.
and it'll pop up too. And you can just go through those. They're each individually there.
Okay, thank you.
What about Elizabeth? I don't know Elizabeth Bishop's last name now. Are you familiar with Elizabeth?
Who are you talking to?
I'm talking to anybody that's listening.
Is Elizabeth with Brockington?
Elizabeth Bishop, her father was Sonny Bishop.
We do know Sonny Bishop. I don't know Elizabeth though.
What about Elizabeth?
She's written a book about, that area, and she seems to be a wealth of historic information. I'm just wondering, and I only know all that from Facebook. Do you have some sort of something that can go out on various Facebook sites?
Sonny was an amazing source of historical information.
Right.
I mean, he's like
There
Larry
may be-
Rowland.
And there may be lots, Larry Rowland used to own Dog Talk.
Yeah.
So there are lots of resources out there. There may be just so much stuff, so much resources out there that y'all have to get a warehouse.
I've got the survey up here and can let you guys know our results so far. So we've had 7 no responses, so we don't have a place we know about that we want to tell you, and then 11 yes responses. And they do range. I will say most of the yes responses are properties that predate the 1950s. So not things we'll be surveying, but certainly still relevant information to know. But yeah, so far only 11 positive responses.
Wow.
That's not very.
Well, we need to get busy.
Well, the Gullah people aren't gonna operate that way, I mean, they'll respond, but once you get them in a public meeting, together.
Yeah, well, no, the
not
Gullah
gonna go to
community, you've
tiny
got to have them
anymore.
come.
You have to go public because
That's the only way you're gonna get.
we all got left behind in the
Right.
digital transformation.
Right, no, they've got to have that. Okay, and some of those little houses are probably the ones my great-grandfather built.
Absolutely, and that's why they're so valuable to us.
Yeah.
They're humble.
They're very humble.
It doesn't matter. We cherish them.
Yeah. But it gave them a home and land.
Shelter.
All right. What did you say?
Thank y'all. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I get a motion for adjournment?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Scary thing.
A second.
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you.